There was a question on AskMen that I answered, and I figured I would actually go ahead and talk about it here. What is your genius idea for a video game you'd love to see put to life? I started typing in a couple of these responses, and then I started coming up with just something crazy, and I wanted to let my adoring fans understand my brain. So without further ado, death doesn't ruin the game. It simply teleports you to another location in the world with an equitable difficulty. Your progress isn't lost per se, but you're inconvenienced from the original region and have to make your way back somehow. Your personal possessions are still yours, but if you stored something away in a crate, it's unreachable, unless you find something that can help you reach across time and space. So to kind of elaborate on that, it's not like, oh hey, that entire area is your new destination. You don't have to go back to the original starting area. The thing is that you can start over if you want with what you currently have on hand. Or, I mean, you're gonna do that anyway because that's how it's gonna work. But you don't have to go find your fucking corpse. You don't lose experience. You don't lose money. The only thing you lose is whatever progress you have, and it's just sitting over there. So if you did a really good job and you built a house and you've got like just a bunch of stuff stashed away and you got like a family thing going on, that's what you lost. But it's not totally lost. It's still there to get back. I understand that a lot of times the concept of loss is what makes us work harder to do well. But sometimes that's not always the case. In a way, this is kind of like a casual adventure game, but at the same time it has some hardcore elements to it. Let's just think Skyrim, because in a way Skyrim is kind of the concept that I was looking at, and mostly because of the next step is a truly open world game. I should be able to climb walls and enter buildings, because fuck you waist-high fences. Waist-high fences and anything similar are the bane of my existence when it comes to video games. Something like this that I've been thinking about may actually be the game that I would want to play, because in my mind, the way that I would want it to work is it starts to adapt over time and it gets more and more content that begins to adjust how the game is played, but not taking away from the base. It's kind of like expanding, but expanding on everything. So obviously, if you look at games like Fallout or Assassin's Creed, there's to a degree a bit of free running abilities, but there's a lot of times where you just can't do anything. And like, come on, especially in in Assassin's Creed, you should be able to just climb up whatever you want and go wherever you want, because why the hell not? Now I know that there's like storyline elements, and I've never actually played the game. I've played a little bit, but I've never played the game like from start to finish kind of thing, and I know there's some time travel components to it, but the thing is that restriction ruins it for me. Now, having pure unadulterated freedom like Minecraft, for instance, it paralyzes me, because I need a sense of direction. I need somewhere I have to go, but I don't have to go right fucking now, and the game's not going to get ruined if I don't go, or if I slack off or go somewhere else. So with that whole climbing walls open world concept, I'd want to continue it and make it to where you can fabricate elaborate but realistic means of traveling across building tops and great distances. So I want to be able to build a hang glider and fucking use it. Or I should be able to create something like a grappling hook or whatever if I feel like it, and maybe it's just a one-use thing, or maybe it has to stay here kind of thing. So you made it to where you can traverse between two buildings, but it stays that way. You can't reuse that item. You have to go make another one, or you make a different one that is reusable, but it functions differently. So like an actual grappling hook, kind of like Batman works, I would want it to be realistic. You can't just constantly use it. At some point it might break, but let's make it reasonable. If it's your first or fifth one, maybe there's like 20 tries or something, I don't know. It needs to be something that you can fashion within the world, and you aren't necessarily gifted with all the items in the area. Now, maybe you are, but it may be a slightly different or weaker, something like that. So using the materials in the region, always a great idea too. So there can be some survival components to it as well. Now, the thing that I find most frustrating about games that do that is it feels like there's too much focus on it. I like a game where I can just stop and just go and do whatever the hell I want and continue down the path that I want, and then come back and be like, maybe I'll build a house or whatever. Terraria has a pretty decent balance with that. I mean, you don't even have to build a house from the get-go. You don't ever have to build a house if you don't want to. You can go through that entire game and build on the fly if you absolutely wanted to. And I mean, it's not necessarily advised. There's benefits to all the other stuff with having a town and everything, but for me, in a way, having the town also makes me stagnant. It makes me not play it right. Or it makes me not play it in a way that is more adventurous. It's kind of like when I have a place to stay anyway, and I'm broke. Like now, I just stay at home and do whatever. Instead of adventuring, instead of going out and taking risks and the like. You're the protagonist, right? You're the guy who, in this story, whatever the story is, you're the badass. You're the one that matters the most. So why is it that as an amazing protagonist, you suck at things? I understand that you, as a person, you suck at those things. But I shouldn't be trying to craft something and it have a failure state. I remember this from playing EverQuest. I had a recipe for something, and I had all the ingredients for it, and I would fucking fail miserably. And that's how you learned? No. Failure shouldn't be how you learn in the game. Because remember, video games are not real life. That's how we learn in real life. Because that's just how it works, and that's also why I suck at real life too, because I don't like failing. It's demoralizing. It makes me feel like shit. So I would rather have a challenge in another way. The discovery is great. If you play Pocket Mortys, the Rick and Morty sort of Pokemon game, there's ways to discover crafting recipes by just inserting shit. Now, it'd be nice if there was an easier transition between it. Like if instead of it going from screen to screen to, back and forth between screens, if like on one side you had a scroll of all the items that mattered and you just pop it into whatever spot you wanted, that'd be great. The UI is great, but it's all like flip between one screen to the next, and that's kind of annoying when it comes to games. We need to be able to do stuff on the same screen. And don't tell me it's because it's fucking mobile, because there's plenty of mobile apps out there, like the Imgur and the Reddit apps, for instance, that are amazing at doing this. So get with your asses. Move your something. Yeah, get with your asses, bitches. Okay, so the next step would be no forced linear paths to get to point B or C or D or whatever. That should be the least desirable option. For people who just want to move on, that's fine. The thing is that when doing that, when you force people to do that, it's like the lack of open worldness. You should incentivize me to get to that point, but you shouldn't need me to get there as a game dev. I should not be required to get to that point. Yes, I should be required to get to that point in order to progress the story, but at the same time, I like having a little side stories too when I run into shit. And I understand Witcher 3 is pretty good at this. I've never played it. And I understand Witcher 3 is an amazingly massive game that has a ton of content in it as well. And chances are it probably fills in a lot of the gaps here. But there are some other things here that I would say most likely no game fits. And I'm sure Witcher 3 doesn't to some degree. But I mean, sometimes doing something on the side should also affect your main story. And I know Witcher 3 does that as well. I mean, Witcher has been known for that for years, and same thing with like Mass Effect. And I like the fact that you can affect your story. Now, when it comes down to it, chances are you're probably just going to end up with whatever your ending is. But that's kind of boring in a way. I want a world that is a little bit more open world than that. Maybe the original quest that you went on is over. The character you wanted to save is dead. Now you have to move on to something else. Don't make that the actual events that occur. Don't make this, oh my god, this thing happened, because then that's just a linear story with a fucking built-in and contrived twist. Kill the person off because you fucked up. And then now that you fucked up, you go and you do whatever else that needs to be done and, redeem yourself or something like that. If you succeeded in saving that person, then other events occur beyond that. Think of it like a rope, a piece of rope. If you've ever taken a piece of nylon rope and you just cut one end of it, for the most part, you're going to have like 3, maybe 4 or 5 cords, depending, right? You unravel that, and you've got those 3 or let's say 5, right? You've got these 5 cords that are splayed out. But the thing is, each one of them is also made up of strands themselves. And in some cases, it could be like 100 of them. So in essence, what could happen is you get to a point in your story, and now you have maybe 3 or 5 options. And within that 3 or 5 options, there's potentially 100 other results. Now, I know, this is all fantastical because that's ridiculous. That's difficult. Most games, they want you to narrow it back down to the ending, and they want you to finalize what it was. But that, to me, tells me that, I understand like maybe the Stanley Parable is a little different, and I actually have it, I just haven't played it yet, because there's a lot of things you can do in the Stanley Parable. Like, there's one I think I saw Hank Green playing for like 4 hours or something, and it's like the baby ending or some crap. That's cool to me. The fact that there are multiple endings, and they aren't necessarily linearly integrated. You can, if the first thing I did was walk backwards, like, what would happen if Super Mario Brothers was reinvented from the ground up, and instead of walking to the right, you walked left? What would the world be like? Sure, there'd be a lot of similarities, but if you played the game from right to left, what would it be? Who knows? Nobody fucking knows, because nobody's done it. And I think it would be fantastic. And that's the way that I'm thinking. It's like, just because you don't go the specified route through whatever story, and one of the steps in here, and this is pretty far down, it's actually like one of the last ones on the main list that I have. Realistically, it would lack voice acting for exposition and storytelling, because otherwise it's a huge undertaking. If you could start with 4 or 5 stories, that would be nuts. This would be a massive storytelling endeavor. You would be paying millions upon millions upon millions, probably billions, if this all worked out the way that I'm thinking. Because if you were going to put in that many voice actors and that much stuff. And so you may have to cut down on cinematics. You'd have to probably make a lot more 2D art, which is unfortunate, but at the same time understandable. One thing that I have in here is that starting points would never be the same. So it's kind of like No Man's Sky. You have no starting points. So if I choose a different starting character setup, I don't get the same fucking treatment with slightly different lines. And that's always been a frustration for me. I don't want, one of the reasons why I haven't played the original Deus Ex beyond like a little bit of the beginning, because it's all the same. It's all the fucking same. You're just doing things slightly differently. Like when D&D, for instance, as a dungeon master, you could have no story. You could let your people make their characters, and then you can create a world based on that. You can figure out the kind of challenges that you want associated with those things. Not necessarily to fuck with them, but to personalize it. Now, I know that having a personalized story in a video game is difficult because you're programming something. And programming means that you're setting rules. And through these rules, you're setting limitations, you're setting restrictions. Fortunately, this kind of stuff is getting better. And, if it comes down to it, one of the things that I've considered when it comes to any kind of programming is that it's additive. There are now options in video editors, let's say, that can do massive graphics. Just these crazy ass things that normally you would have to construct yourself over hours and hours of time. But now they're just plugins. And you readjust them however you want. I mean, that's the difference between Photoshop and somebody who did photo editing 50 years ago. Times have changed. We now have more at our fingertips to play with. The same thing could happen for video games. You essentially take all of the skeletal system and the muscular, you take all the non-superficial stuff, and you take all of the foundational construction stuff that is within the programming, and you expand on it. You incorporate it. Maybe the entire game of Witcher 3 becomes like a plugin at some point. Now, obviously, there's licensing issues and copyright things and like that stuff, and that in a way both helps and also hinders depending on how you look at it. Thing is, though, you can expand on this kind of stuff and you can make it bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, in a way, I'm kind of deviating here. So I'd like to go back to the list a little bit, and one of them is no grinding. I fucking hate grinding. I hate that grinding seems to be needed in order to get places. Now, I know Witcher 3 has it to where if you're smart enough in fighting, it's possible that you can defeat an opponent that is much higher level than you. At the same time, that's one way of doing things. It's another thing if you're in the air and you're like, I know what I need to do to fight that guy. I just have to take care of a couple of things in the process. If it was a little more organic in getting to that, where through non-forced yet linear processes, the likelihood is that you'll be more ready than unprepared. You'll be more prepared than you would be unprepared for these challenges, because when you come to them, it's likely. But then obviously it's always good to have, some things that are just kind of out of place. Now, obviously with the death and the teleportation thing, that can be an interesting concept. Again, maybe you've been very careful and you haven't died yet, and you've done everything that you need to do, and you've built up your little house, and you've got little satellite places, and you die. And you get a random spot, and you're all the way across the damn world. You're on the other half of the world. But here's the thing. It's not a punishment. It's not a bug. It is, in fact, a feature of the game that I'm thinking of. It also incorporates science fiction and fantasy concepts, because I love when those things collide. That's why I always loved Final Fantasy. But just because they're fantasy and sci-fi doesn't mean that they're the persistent circumstances. Maybe it's set more modern, but there's some fantasy and there's some sci-fi touches in there. And maybe later on in the game, there's an option when you find a spell or an item of some sort that allows you to bind your boxes together. The game already knows you have this box, or maybe you have to get back to the other box to connect it. Like what about fast travel? Fast travel is good and bad sometimes. But instead of getting rid of fast travel, let's make it to where you can travel quickly. So now you have teleportation, teleportation is one option, but you have transportation options. Horses, buggies, cars, planes, boats, whatever. You can get fast boats, slow boats, freighter boats, ferries, etc. You don't have to be stuck with one visual aesthetic. Granted, yet again, that creates complications. I understand that. That's not the point. The point is, this is sort of my fantasy video game. This is the game that I want in my life because I feel like it's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to continue. One thing that I hate is, this, hey, everything is just as difficult or slightly more difficult than it should be, thus making your time playing a huge pain in the ass kind of shit. It goes along the lines of, making difficulty a more of a progressive thing instead of, oh God, this is fucking stupid. Why am I here already? Or why is this so damn hard? Why do I have to try so hard just to get anywhere? Sure, there is, if you look at Dark Souls, for instance, there's a lot to the difficulty, because then when you do it, oh my God, it's just achievement. But at the same time, the next step would be difficulty settings actually making things difficult, so you can change it. Instead of just making enemies that are like bullet sponges and forcing resource conservation and removing pertinent game functions. Like, I hate it when I'm playing a game, I turn it on hard, I'm the same power, but the enemy takes 15,000 bullets to die. If I shoot you in the fucking head, it should be dead. You should be dead. Or change the enemies to things that are harder to kill, but not necessarily just bullet sponges. And then also lowering your ammo resources and making it to where, you get fatigued faster, or removing your fucking radar. That's stuff that makes no sense to me. Removing or reducing the typical functionality of the game doesn't make it harder, it just makes it annoying. Now, one of the things you could also do is provide difficulty settings. Maybe I want it hard. I want fast guys, but they're easy to kill. And I'm limited to the number of weapons that I get, to a shotgun and a pistol, because that's a challenge I want for me. Or maybe I have a knife and a chainsaw, and that's it. But I only fight against melee guys. And they don't just deal more damage just because it's harder. I've now created a dynamic for my difficulty that I'm trying to play. You've now created a replayability of the game that's different than like any other game that I've ever played. I've never seen that as an option. I've seen it as more of a cheat. It's like, oh, hey, we'll play like Rocket League and, make it more difficult or more fun or whatever. But when you change the customization, change the normal function of the game and still make it normal, but it's just harder because of it, or it's easier because of what you've done. Hey, I have infinite ammo, but all I've got is a machine gun. That's still not easy. It's easy mode for most things, but it still isn't necessarily easy, because then what happens if you do change it to where they're fast ability sponge guys or bullet sponge guys? Because you did it yourself. You created your customized difficulty level. And one of the things that you could do is you could have presets. You could have like a walk through the park, an easy, a normal, a hard, a ridiculous, insane, a nightmare, whatever. And each of those settings has like basic things. And then like some of them, the further you get up into the difficulty, the more crazy things are actually added to it. But what you could also do is like incorporate it into your walk in the park, but you like use one of your super hard things that are typically only in the super hard like defaults. It's still there as an option, but your easy and your walk in the park have their defaults, right? Your hard and your super hards or whatever, they have their defaults, but they just have more shit in them too. You go to hard and they incorporate the fast guys, the guys that grab onto you and do whatever. But let's say you wanted that in your easy mode game because you just wanted to fight those guys on easy. Boom, you can do it. It just adjusts based on that. Like almost like creating a point system for difficulty. When you make a character in like just about any D&D game, you have a number of points that you can allocate. Sometimes you don't, depending, but in most D&D games that are video games, you do. So it's kind of like that. You can allocate a point system to where you want it. If you have leftover points, it's harder. That's my assumption anyway. And some difficulty settings cost more than others. So you've already created a customization before you even started the game, which I think would be fantastic because there's a lot of that going on. And again, they're still just default options. So you're like, well, it's easy. All my points are allocated, but they're all on this. It's like gun respawn rate is maxed out. Ammo capacity is maxed out. Ammo boxes are maxed out and you get them everywhere. Whatever. That's just one way of thinking about it. And I already said, cross it between fantasy and sci-fi, like Final Fantasy. Starting point's never the same. I never understood this. I know that some games don't do this, and I'm so glad that they don't. But I hate it when they do. You don't fatigue after 30 seconds because you're a badass. You're the guy that's there to resolve whatever the conflict is. You may or may not be a superhero, and obviously, there's points where you get better. Again, I kind of like the Terraria thing where I don't like being slow, and I hate starting out like that, so Starbound is a little better of an option because it seems as though you're running most of the time. It doesn't feel like you're just trudging along trying to get places. But then later on in the game, in Terraria at least, you get boots that make you run fast. That's cool. Problem is, I hate that after I start a new character. So let me just fucking run. Let me just run. I'm an awesome dude. I'm a badass. Okay? And here's another thing. I love this, okay? It kind of goes in the same slot. I don't mind games that limit your weapons, but I usually mind how they limit them. It's like inventory space or whatever. You know what? No. Because, yes, I know having a rocket launcher taking up 16 slots is a balancing act, if you will, when it comes to a fucking pistol. But my thinking is, there are too many weapons in the game. There's just too many, right? And you get to carry a total of 5, maybe 7, I don't know. 5 is the number I came up with originally. But they're all really well balanced. No weapon is really that much more powerful than the other. Like, you can't be firing a fucking rocket launcher 15 times in a row. It doesn't work like that. You get a rocket launcher, and you get like 3 rockets max. And you have reload time and all that crap. And the reasoning for this isn't to like say, oh, well, this weapon's overpowered, let's reduce it or whatever. It's because winning won't require the biggest, baddest gun, but your ingenuity. Be smart about your weapons. Now, again, you can have a bazooka in your inventory and have 3 total rockets that you're going to use. But instead of using them to hit the enemy, you hit like the background and it starts to crumble. Or whatever. That's also another thing I never put in was the ability to destroy things. Destructible backgrounds has always been a thing I love. I was playing, God, what the hell is it called? It's an old X-Men game, I think, for the Game Boy Advanced. You start off as Wolverine and you can destroy like half the shit that's there. I mean, you can't destroy, the car that's there blocking your way because it's intended to do that, but that's part of that linear thing I don't like. If I'm strong enough, if I'm powerful enough, if I'm smart enough, I should be able to destroy everything around me. Everything. And, again, if I'm smart enough, strong enough, and powerful enough, I should be able to build shit with that stuff too. I should know how, but I should also have the tools. And one of the things that I was thinking to make crafting things a little easier, especially if it was something that's more difficult to do, I don't want to stand there for 15 minutes while something's getting crafted. I hate that crap. Instead, what I'd prefer is having like helpers. So you get a group of people, slaves, workers, whatever you want to call them, depending on how you want to play the game, I suppose. And they do the crafting work for you, especially on the bigger projects. That way, you can get shit done without having to be there. And so you can kind of create your own little town if you want to. And again, if you want to run it like they're slaves, fine. Now, I would say chances are there will be repercussions because of this. That's just typically how this kind of stuff goes down. So if you want to pay these people, it's probably a better option. Now, if you can't, then, maybe it's one of those situations where you're just like, okay, you fuck off, I'll kill you. And, I'll show you people what it's like if you don't work for me, if you don't get shit done. And then maybe slowly over time, you become a more benevolent person. I don't know. It all depends on how you want to play it. And I think that would be a great way to embark on playing a video game, because you create this dynamic for whatever it is that you want. You can create your own world, but it's still not a real world. Yes, there's still somewhat real world-like things that can happen. So that is, for the most part, like the overall functionality of the game. However, there's one thing I added a little later. People like opening loot crates. I'm going to give you some crates. You get a shitload of crates in-game if you do even basic exploration. We're talking 5-10 minutes of walking around and shit could net you anywhere between 1 and 2 crates easily, right? Maybe even more, depending on how you look at it. I don't know. But here's the thing. Okay, so the crates, they can't be opened normally. You have to have a key. Keys can be found all over. Bronze keys open 1 box, silver key opens 3, and gold opens 5. Each key has an equal chance of existing when you pick it up. None of this rare key bullshit, all right? You have a chance of picking up a key and it only opening 1 box. Or you have a chance of picking up a key and opening 5. But I'm under the impression that you want to make it to where there are more boxes than there are keys. This makes you want to continue exploring and you get more, and there's a sense of reward in it anyway. Thing is that crate items have literally 0 effect on the game. None. They are purely cosmetic and or collectible. So they can be items that you can put in your house. They can be items that are associated with your character somewhat. You put a decal on like a piece of armor or something if you want. And that would be something that I would find interesting. If you can find like stickers and shit, or you can find pieces of furniture or whatever. And that would be the thing. None of these things affect the game. A piece of furniture in your house, in my mind, doesn't really affect the game. Now, sure, if you want to set it up in such a way where it's sort of difficult to navigate, that'd be different. And that would be where we'd have to figure out how that would work. But I'm thinking it would be more of the 2-dimensional cosmetics. You know, you can put fucking posters and shit on the wall, or it's something that, maybe even like something like acoustic foam. You know, things that don't literally affect your gameplay by making it better or worse. Now, acoustic foam might be an interesting way of changing the dynamic. I don't know. Obviously, you're dealing with the psychology of the player, and if you're in a world where other people are involved, you're affecting their psychology as well. So let's say you get a bunch of pink stickers and a bunch of orange ones and like a bunch of blue ones, and somehow you create an image through like a pixel art kind of thing. And it becomes a distraction for people, and you use that as a means of fucking them up. See, now you've used your ingenuity. You haven't changed the dynamic. You haven't changed the power of the game. You've changed the power of you. You are the one who made the effect. If there's a bunch of rope everywhere, and you decide, well, I'm just going to string rope up everywhere. Now you've created your own fence. Cool. If you want to do that, you can do that. And that's also a thing, like that would be part of the game where actual physical objects somehow have a way of being constructed into other things, and thus you can do whatever. But let's say you find yourself in this abandoned city. For some reason, you're in this major metropolitan city and it's completely abandoned. But you go exploring and you find, some cabling. Or better yet, you go inside of a building, you find an office, and you go and you dig up all the copper you can find. And now you made your own, like some copper cabling. Maybe you found some rubber tubing or something. Or maybe you just found a shit ton of Ethernet cords. You tie them together and now you have yourself, a grappling hook or something. That's the kind of game that I would want to see played. But at the same time, you die and now you're out in the middle of this fantastical world and you have some Ethernet cords on hand. Now they're a whip. Maybe you found a sci-fi weapon that's just like some sort of plasma gun or something. But it doesn't work against most of the inhabitants because they're all magical. And they have force fields that work against magical bolts of energy. And now you find out that your weapon, although this sci-fi gun, is essentially a form of magic. And now your worlds have crossed. They've crossed over, and you get to figure out how this would work. So you switch over to fists, and you realize you beat the shit out of these people instead. But they're so accustomed to people using magic against them that they don't really train the physical arts, the martial arts, and so you just like destroy a town with your whip of Ethernet cables. That's the thing. We don't have games like that. And I want one like that. And I want to continue. You got your zero effect on the game with the cosmetic crafted, these created items. And again, they should serve zero initial purpose. Now again, if you get crafty with them, putting shit on walls and stuff, and you make it look like there's something there that's not, you're a fucking artist, go for it, you're amazing. That's you. That's not the game. But there's like 100,000 crafted items, maybe more, maybe there's 1 million, I don't know. Obviously, there'd be a lot of art assets to have to work with. Have to pay these artists a lot of things, money mostly. But they all have the exact same rarity. All the exact. So if there's 1 million, you have a 1 in a million chance of getting any of them. Now the thing is that if it's in a game where when you pick it up, nobody else can pick it up, that wouldn't work. Instead, whenever you open a box, you always have the exact same chances to get all of them. So all of the items have every chance of being duplicated, but also have a higher chance of not being duplicated because there are way more options. So if you do get a duplicated item, duplicates could inevitably become more valuable. Because of the rarity of it, the gambler's fallacy. Okay, and so because of that, I want to fuck with the weird economy bullshit that comes from crap like that. Fuck you, weird economy BS. There's no rare items. Your keys aren't rare. They have the exact same chances of being gold, silver, or bronze. All of your crates have exactly the same amount. So in essence, they're not worth running around trying to collect for the sake of collection or trying to collect so you can make money off of them or anything. They're there as something you want to use for other purposes that are outside of the function of the game or to somehow be incorporated, like I said. Gotta catch 'em all. I like the unboxing idea. I don't like the fact that you can just get the same fucking item every goddamn time and then, oh my god, I got this rare item, whoopity-doo. Fuck that noise. Everything's the same rarity. And it's kind of the same thing with guns, too. There's a shit ton of guns. They're all relatively equal power in some way or another. And you can't win the game with brute force anyway, unless you absolutely make it that way. So, with regards to the keys and the crates, you can buy a key at $1. It's always random, and you may get a silver key, and you may get a gold key, and you may get a bronze key. Who knows? Sounds like a lot of money. I don't know. If you want to pay the money, fine, go for it. You are betting on the chance that you'll get a 5-box key. You get a gold key. But the thing is, you have the equal chance of not getting one. Or rather, not getting one is a greater chance, but you have a greater chance of not getting the gold key, but you still have the same chance to get the gold key as you would the other keys. You can also buy 25 boxes for $5. So let's say you're one of those people who's just really into the aesthetic. You know, maybe you find, some paint samples or something, and you're like, hey, I want to put paint samples on the wall because that's what I do. Or I want to put multiple paint samples next to each other and create like a chromatic scale of one color or something. Well, again, you still only have the same amount of chances each time, and you may get duplicates. And maybe you're betting on the duplicates, I don't know. So you buy 25 bucks in boxes for $5. Do. You don't have to. But chances are people are going to buy them, people aren't going to buy them, and some people might throw... and there's no tiered options. You don't gotta buy one, 5 boxes for $1, and then 25 for 5, and then like 100 boxes for like $10 or something. No, you get one option of buying 25 boxes for $5 or whatever the actual money would be, probably like $2.99, and maybe like the keys would probably be like 50 cents, maybe a quarter. Who fucking knows? Who cares? The thing is that there's none of this bullshit of this artificial rarity crap. It's all the same. So if you want to throw money at it, you throw money at it because you want to, not because you think you're going to get anything out of it that's beyond, like somehow you'll have the upper hand over somebody else. No, the upper hand is you. Or it's not. And if you fuck up, you fuck up. And the thing is that somebody who creates an empire in one area may never explore the rest of the world. But somebody who dies might. They may actually have a better experience playing the game. Unless, of course, they just, the other person wants to stay in the one area and doesn't care. But that's the thing. Depending on who you are, depends on how the game is for you. And that is the game that I want. Oh, and maybe throw in a story with some drama and shit. I don't know. I suck at relationships.